Hundreds of billions of dollars vanished. Millions of lives ruined. Behind the infamous names of Enron, Madoff, and FTX lies more than just numbers. These are stories of unchecked greed, sophisticated deception, and the systems that failed to protect us. In this video, we will dissect the most shocking financial scams in history, and more importantly, we'll uncover the hard-learned lessons so you never become the next victim. 1. The accounting twins, Enron and WorldCom. Let's start with the scandals that literally changed the rules of the game. Enron. Their business model was simple. We're making billions, just don't ask how. Enron transformed from a boring pipeline company into an energy trading giant by creating hundreds of fake companies, what they called special purpose entities, to hide massive losses and debts. They used an accounting trick called mark-to-market, letting them count future expected profits as money they'd already made. When the house of cards collapsed, the stock plummeted from $90 to less than $1, vaporizing $74 billion in shareholder value and the life savings of thousands of employees. The most shocking part? Their accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, was caught shredding documents as investigators closed in. And just when people thought corporate fraud couldn't get worse, WorldCom said, "Hold my beer." They were America's second-largest phone company, and they cooked their books by treating regular expenses as long-term investments. Imagine claiming your grocery bills are home improvements. This $11 billion fraud was the largest in U.S. history at the time, and it all came crashing down thanks to one curious internal auditor. 2. The Ponzi Kings, Madoff and Stanford. I've got a special opportunity that makes 10 to 12% returns every year, no matter what. If anyone says this to you, run. That was the promise of Bernie Madoff, who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, worth $64.8 billion. A Ponzi scheme is simple. You use new investors' money to pay returns to earlier ones. No real investing ever happens. Madoff's scheme lasted nearly 30 years, targeting wealthy individuals and charities who trusted him through personal connections. What's truly shocking is that a financial analyst, Harry Markopolos, warned the SEC it was a scam for 8 years, and they ignored him. The scheme only collapsed in the 2008 crisis, leading to a 150-year prison sentence for Madoff and financial ruin for thousands. Just months after Madoff's arrest, another Ponzi king fell, Alan Stanford. He promised incredible returns on CDs through his bank in Antigua, running a $7 billion scheme. What made his scam so cruel was that he specifically targeted retirees and middle-class investors looking for safe investments, funding his lavish lifestyle with their trust. 3. The global meltdown, the subprime mortgage crisis. Can't afford a house? No job? Terrible credit? No problem, sign here. This wasn't just one scam. It was a layer cake of fraud that nearly destroyed the global economy. Banks gave mortgages to people who couldn't possibly repay them. Why? Because they immediately sold these toxic loans to Wall Street firms. These firms chopped them up, repackaged them as safe investments called mortgage-backed securities, and got rating agencies like Moody's and S&P to slap AAA ratings on them. Predatory lenders targeted vulnerable communities with deceptive loans, and when people inevitably started defaulting, the whole system imploded. The result? $10 trillion in lost housing value, millions of foreclosures, and a global financial crisis. The craziest part? Almost no major executives went to jail, and the banks were bailed out with taxpayer money because they were too big to fail. 4. The betrayal of trust. Wells Fargo and Martin Shkreli. Sometimes the scam happens right under your nose, at a place you trust. Wells Fargo employees, under intense pressure, to meet unrealistic sales targets, opened over 3.5 million fake bank accounts and credit cards without customer consent. They did it to keep their jobs and to boost the company's stock price. When whistleblowers tried to use the company's own ethics line, they were fired. Wells Fargo paid billions in fines, but the damage to its reputation was immense. Then there's Martin Shkreli, once known as the most hated man in America. In 2015, he bought the rights to Daraprim, a 62-year-old life-saving drug, and raised the price overnight from $13.50 to $750 a pill, a 5,000% increase. While he eventually went to prison for unrelated securities fraud, the price hike itself was perfectly legal. He simply exposed a broken system of price gouging that continues to this day. 5. The global heist, 1MDB. Imagine an entire country getting robbed by its own leader. That's the 1MDB scandal. One Malaysia Development Berhad was supposed to be an investment fund for Malaysia's economic development. Instead, Prime Minister Najib Razak and his associates stole at least $4.5 billion from it. Where did the money go? Luxury real estate, a super yacht, fine art, and even funding the Hollywood movie The Wolf of Wall Street, a film, ironically, about financial fraud. Major banks like Goldman Sachs helped raise money for the fund, earning huge fees while ignoring massive red flags. The scam was exposed partly thanks to the extravagant lifestyle of the Prime Minister's inner circle. Najib Razak was sentenced to prison, and Malaysia is still trying to recover the stolen billions. The Silicon Valley lie. Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, claimed to have a revolutionary technology that could run hundreds of blood tests from a single finger prick. The problem? It didn't work. Holmes built Theranos into a $9 billion company on that lie. She was on magazine covers, compared to Steve Jobs, and had a board full of powerful former government officials. Theranos even set up testing centers in Walgreens, performing flawed tests on real patients. When employees raised concerns about the inaccurate and dangerous results, they were intimidated and threatened. The scam fell apart after an exposé by Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou. This wasn't just financial fraud. It was a medical one that put thousands of lives at risk. Holmes was eventually sentenced to over 11 years in prison for deceiving her investors and the public. 7. The European giant and the phantom billions. Wirecard and Archegos Wirecard was supposed to be Germany's fintech success story, a payments giant worth over $28 billion. Just one problem? $2.1 billion of their cash simply didn't exist. They claimed the money was in Philippine bank accounts, but the banks had never heard of it. For years, financial regulators ignored warnings from journalists and instead investigated the journalists themselves. When the fraud was exposed, Wirecard collapsed overnight. Then there's the question, how does one guy lose $20 billion in 10 days? Ask Bill Huang of Archegos Capital. He used massive amounts of borrowed money and complex derivatives called total return swaps to take huge positions in a few stocks. Each bank didn't know how much other banks had lent him. When his bets went south, it set off a fire sale that cratered stocks and cost banks like Credit Suisse billions, helping push the Swiss giant toward its eventual collapse. 8. The Crypto King's collapse and the timeless lesson. Finally, Sam Bankman-Fried. His entire image was as fake as his business. FTX was supposed to be a legitimate cryptocurrency exchange. Behind the scenes, it was a mess of fraud and outright theft. The scam was simple. FTX was secretly transferring customer funds to Alameda Research, SBF's personal trading firm, to make risky bets, cover losses, and buy luxury real estate. When customers tried to withdraw their money, the $8 billion hole was exposed. Until the very end, SBF was celebrated as a genius, testifying before Congress as the face of responsible crypto. As technology advances, scams evolve. But the red flags remain the same. If returns seem too good to be true, if transparency is lacking, or if you don't fully understand the investment, your money might be funding someone else's private island. Did you enjoy this breakdown? Then please subscribe and hit that notification bell.